Hello and welcome to today's masterclass on functional manifestation. I am Ellie Silen. I'm a leadership and business coach and a teacher of energy alchemy for entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders. So, really excited about today's class. We're going to be talking about functional manifestation as a systems-based approach to bringing your desires to life. So, first thing to remember is that manifestation and all the dialogue that surrounds it is a really highly charged concept. Like there's a massive amount of projection and emotion and judgment and trauma around the notion of desire and the belief that there's something that you can do to make it happen. And it's really important to note before we begin the masterclass that the wider conversation and context around manifestation is a really nuanced conversation that has to take into account the world that we live in with its inequalities and its uncertainties. And what we're discussing here is how to identify the roots of our desires and how to harmonize them with the immediate context of your life. So it's really an attempt to bring a more realistic, practical approach to what is often depicted as a mysterious kind of law of attraction-esque practice. But please note that I'm not attempting to hold space for the wider conversation around power, desire, and life circumstances that are beyond our control. So, let's begin with the idea that we spend so much of our time longing for what we desire, whilst holding a certain level of ambivalence towards those desires. And that ambivalence in those desires, like we have this multiple kind of concurrent, conflicting beliefs and emotions and thoughts and values, kind of all contributing to this really kind of messy soup that sits around our desires. You know, we really want the thing, but we're masters of gaslighting ourselves. And a lot of it is because we sort of bind ourselves to these self-constructed identities. And we exile anything that doesn't fit with this narrative that we create for ourselves. An example of that would be, let's say that you are a spiritual practice coach. And at the same time, you have this like really strong desire for a luxury car, a luxury sports car, because you love cars, you know, you're a petrol head and you love beautiful things and you love like mechanics, and there's this particular car that you really admire and you're like, oh my God, I'm so blown away by like the deliciousness of this car. And it's just so smooth. And like, I love the leather seats and the quality and the finery and the textures and the torque and all of these sort of car terms. But like, I cannot reconcile my desire for like a luxury sports car with my identity as a spiritual practice coach who teaches on simplicity and mindfulness and abstinence, let's say. And so I'll just like shove that longing for a luxury sports car, I'll just shove it out of my head and I'll just pretend it's not there. And so the result of that is you're creating internal civil war. And, you know, this has been like one of the biggest shifts for me is understanding that whenever I name something that I desire, which in itself is a powerful practice to really name one of your desires, you know, there's always going to be a certain level of internal tension that sits around that desire because, you know, by very definition, when you name a desire, it's like a sort of stretching action from your soul where you're like, I want that. And so the minute you say, I want that, you put yourself in relationship to that thing and a sort of pathway emerges to that thing and all your stuff comes up around it. And in the past, I didn't really have the language for that. I didn't understand that it's possible to be conflicted and to have multiple concurrent, you know, thoughts and beliefs and narratives around the thing that I want. And that actually I need to take the time to bring all of those conflicting inner selves into alignment with one another, to take a leadership role with all of those different parts of myself, so that I can take clear, concise, cohesive action towards, making that thing I want happen. And so when we're in this state of internal civil war, in this sort of conflicted, ambivalent state, it makes it really difficult to actually identify our true desires, let alone lead ourselves through the choices and the process and the actions required to bring them about. Even identifying your desires becomes a very chaotic process, because if you have all of these different voices, I want that thing, but it's like so gross to want that thing, and that doesn't really fit in with like the community that I'm in. It doesn't fit in with the narrative that I hold about myself. It just makes it really hard to feel that simple, clear voice from your soul. I want that. That's what I want. And so I coined the term functional manifestation as a nod to the concept of functional medicine. And functional medicine is an approach to optimal health that takes into consideration a wide spectrum of contributing factors. So, for example, you're not just looking at a rash on your face and bunging some cream on it and being like, I've got a rash here, I'll just put some cream on it, it'll go away. You're actually looking at the root cause of the rash, and you're looking at how to address the bigger picture. You're looking at your diet, your lifestyle, your stress levels, your genetics, your environment, etc., etc. And you're looking at all of these contributing elements to the wider ecology that includes the health of your skin. And so you acknowledge that cream alone may not be enough to bring about clear skin. If I want luminous skin, perhaps I need to change multiple aspects of my life in order to become the kind of human being that naturally has luminous, clear skin. And it's exactly the same with functional manifestation. You systematically identify and unpack your desires, and you note what is required energetically, practically, and creatively to become the kind of person who naturally includes those desires in their life. And if you find yourself trying to bring something about that is completely incongruous to the ecology of your life, that's completely out of alignment to the ecology of your life, then there you have the invitation and the roadmap to look more deeply into why, what, and how. And so you're looking at the context of your life, the ecology of your life, like a map, like a functional map, a 360 view. And it is a combination of cultivating skills, both inner and outer skills, cultivating capacity and making choices, and transforming your stuff that comes up and presents as obstacles. And so it's a very practical approach to like making things happen that you want. And, I hold a very spiritual relationship with life. I believe in the presence of the divine or the sacred or whatever you want to call it. And I believe that the divine not only loves us unconditionally, but is heavily invested in our success. And by success, in this context, I mean living a life that honors the desires of your soul, like really living a life that listens to and honors the desires of your soul. And I also believe that there exists a benevolent force, and let's call this benevolent force wholeness. And I believe that wholeness has a singular, all-encompassing agenda. And that agenda is to heal you and to bring you back home to yourself. And so therefore, I believe that desire is a function of your soul, and that the manifestation process is a function of wholeness. And let's talk more about wholeness. Wholeness really is life force itself. It's the active quality of the divine. So if you think about it, the divine as a presence, the sacred, the divine, like it has an active force. It carries out, it helps propel processes on this earth and this life. And so wholeness is the active quality of the sacred. It's the underlying purpose to your life, to my life, to all life, to everything that exists. Everything that you are here to experience in this life is to help bring you back to wholeness in all of its kind of myriad of ways. Wholeness is a vastly powerful force, and it's available to us instantly and omnipresently at any time. And so when you choose to work with the power of wholeness at any stage of your creative endeavors, what you're doing is you are allowing multiple synchronous healing processes to work together like cogs in a machine, all operating towards helping you bring your creative projects to life, helping you make your desires happen, helping you manifest. So you simultaneously heal, create, and serve the sacred. I'm going to say that again because I love that sentence. It really does distill the whole message of this into one sentence. When you work with the forces of wholeness, when you choose to partner and align with wholeness in your creative endeavors, you simultaneously heal, create, and serve the sacred. So just take a look at all of the processes in your life. And then look at how all of these sequences and processes align with your personal journey to wholeness. So that's a big statement, obviously, but it's just a fundamental law. It is a life-changing approach that you can take with your own life. You look at your life, you look at every single process, the tiny ones and the massive ones. And you look at the sequences of those processes that you're participating in, and you look at how you can align those with wholeness. How can you work with the currents of wholeness? And that is a really beautifully simple and healing way to work with manifestation, where every single stage of the manifestation process is an opportunity to work with the forces of wholeness. And when we purposefully engage with our desires, we do so with a willingness to serve and leverage the power of wholeness. So what do I mean by that? I mean that I recognize that as a human being, as a soul made flesh, as a soul walking around in this body, on this earth, in this life, when I experience and begin to name my desires, I'm like, okay, cool. I am willing to engage purposefully with my desires and building them in helping to manifest them. But I'm doing so with a willingness to serve and leverage the power of wholeness. How can I, through bringing my desires into form, how can I contribute to wholeness? How can I leverage the power of wholeness as a slipstream available to me at all moments? And really, what does purposeful engagement with your desires mean? Well, it's kind of like a 3-step process. Number 1, it's identifying your desires, which of course, as we've said earlier, is a whole process in itself. It is identifying your desires, and it's unpacking and realigning them to your soul's truth. Number 2, it's cultivating and deploying the necessary skills, both inner and outer, to successfully bring those to life. And number 3, it's recognizing and transforming obstacles that show up along the way. And those obstacles usually show up in the form of your stuff, then shows up as, let's say procrastination or fear. So you're identifying your desires and you are making sure that they really align with the truth of your soul. You're then cultivating the skills necessary. And then as you go forth, you recognize and you willingly transform your shit that comes up on the way. If you want to know more about how to unpack and realign your desires, I have made another video. I will put the link underneath this video, just to give you a really simple way to kind of zoom in on your desires and then look at which parts of those desires originate from your soul and which part of those desires may belong to like other people's desires that you've kind of taken on as your own, or maybe come from parts of yourself that are wounded and are in need of healing, which is completely normal. So the video that I've made is in the context of business, but really can be applied to anything in life. And it's really about writing down what you want and why. Like, why do I actually want that thing? What does this mean? Like, what does it mean to me? What would it represent to me? And if I had it, what would change in my life? And then you really start to discern between your soul desires and then those desires that feel like they spring from a self-constructed or an external identity. They're not really coming from my soul, they're coming from like a narrative that I've created about myself. And then I look, whenever I do this, and I do this on a regular basis, just to kind of check in, what are my desires at the moment? Where am I on building them? Like it's a process that you keep refining. And so then I look at all of my soul desires, once I've really like identified the ones that really come from my soul. And I look at, okay, cool. So what is the common thread between my soul desires? And then I look at where they may be like pretty diverse. Remember I talked about the luxury car and then like the spiritual practice. This is very kind of cliche, but it's nice to work with cliches when we do examples. And I think, okay, how can I reconcile the different parts of myself? Once I've identified what my desires are, how can I avert civil war in here? How can I reconcile all these different parts of myself? How can I embrace the fullness of who I am? And then I also look at, all of the common thread that runs between like all the kind of parts of my health, those parts of myself that are coming up to be healed. What does and doesn't belong to me? You immediately then have a roadmap showing you what is coming up to be healed in order to help you take steps to make the thing that you actually want happen. And then you look at, what is this going to require from me? Do I have the internal capacities to fulfill these requirements? Do I have the capacity to make this happen? Or do I need a little bit more time to take more of an internal journey before I'm ready to press the button on this? Because if I do, and I try and zoom ahead and I try and kind of ride roughshod over those parts of myself that aren't quite ready, that are scared, I'm going to end up in conflict with my own goal. And so remember, if you want more guidance on that process, please visit my 5-part video series on unpacking, realigning, and resourcing my soul's desires. And just remember, this is nuanced, ongoing, full spectrum work, but it's actually also practical, compassionate, and powerful. And I really hope that this perspective on desire, on choice, on discernment helps bring clarity and purpose to your dreams. So I wish you the best of luck in bringing your desires to life.